Quick note before we begin, there was a small glitch in our online recording that makes it sound like my audio skips every so often. And if you're old enough like me to remember records, you know what I mean by skips. Not sure what it was or why it happened, but it does resolve itself as we get deeper into the episode. Generally, my online recording platform is really reliable, so we'll cut them a little slack this time. Thanks for your understanding. Now let's get to it.
I was doing a putting lesson with Bruce Rarick. So we do a lot of putting lessons together with my students. It's just fantastic. And he goes, Josh, what was that you said the other day that was just like so insightful? I'm like, oh, I must have said something insightful. He goes, with Bruce, it's like so much of it is getting your setup correct. Because if you get your setup correct, a lot of good things happen during the motions. I said, my quote was, be careful in your setup and be carefree in your swing.
Ooh.
Yeah, I knew I'd get an ooh from you.
I'm writing that one down.
Write it down. You can quote me on that one. I don't think I've had too many quotes through the years that people will actually quote me. I think what happens is we kind of get the opposite, where people aren't really precise enough with their setups. So now they're destined to failure, and now they have to be super careful or restricted or compensate for a poor setup.
Hi, this is Steve Hahn from Huntington Beach, California, and I play at Meadowlark Golf Club. This is Golf Smarter number 917.
Be careful in your setup and be carefree with your swing with Josh Zander.
This is Golf Smarter, sharing stories, tips, and insights from great golf minds to help you lower your score and raise your golf IQ. Here's your host, Fred Green.
Welcome back to the Golf Smarter podcast, Josh.
Thanks for having me back, Fred. It's always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure to talk to you. We always have so much fun just talking random golf topics, which is the way I love to do it. It's almost like we're walking down the fairway together, just getting into random conversations about golf. So much fun.
I love it. It's kind of a random game anyway, so let's go random.
Tell me how your online video lessons are going and how accustomed people are getting to learning how to play golf online with somebody.
Yeah, it's definitely happening. It's not the best way. I still love to see the person in person just because it's more intimate. You really get to know the person better and really can understand how they're going to learn best. And you can try some things. But if you can't get to see me in person, then online works great too. And I have an assessment process where I understand how you're designed to swing the club, and I can really keep you on track. And so I have students all over the world who see me online, and it's a fun part of my job. Get to meet people that I ordinarily get to meet, so it's great.
That was one of the things that I loved going from working in radio to working with podcasting, is that with radio, you're always restricted by geography and time. And with podcasting, you're not restricted by either of those things, especially geography. And I would think for golf instruction, it's kind of the same way in the sense that you get to meet people that are not in your regional area. That, I guess with golf instruction previously, you had a 10-mile radius, maybe, that people would be willing to drive to take a lesson. And hopefully somebody would tell somebody and they'd come in from 20 miles away. But now you can do it with people all over the world.
Yeah, now anytime. Yeah, it's pretty cool when you think about it that way. It's like the world is your, you have the opportunity to share your knowledge with anybody who's interested, and I'm in. If you're interested, let's go on this journey together, and let's have some fun, and let's learn on the way, enjoy the process, and get better. Yeah, which is what we're all trying to do. It's what I'm still trying to do, not just as a teacher, but as a player. I may be deluding myself, but I still think my best golf's in front of me, and I've played some pretty good golf in the past. So I'm still trying to get better, and I still have epiphanies, and I love sharing that information, and we're always learning more, and it's all part of the fun. So the more people who can join in, I'm in.
That amazes me because I continue to talk about the longer I play, the more I learn, the more understanding of nuance that I get in the game. What is your latest epiphany in your game?
Well, this may seem a little trivial, but I was just working, and I actually have a coach. I work on my game with Terry Rolls, who's a fantastic, top 100 coach, and I'm always bugging him with questions, and he's a really deep thinker about things, and he understands how I'm designed to swing. We both use Mike Adams' system of assessment, so we know biomechanically how I'm designed, and I'll say, what do you think about this? And the other day I was on the lesson tee in between lessons, and I just hit a few balls, and I was just trying to get a little bit more depth with my right shoulder, which gets everything more round, allows me to deliver the hit a little bit more from the inside and shallow me out a little bit. And he goes, for your style, which is somebody who covers the ball a little bit more, I come down a little bit steeper. It's a perfect match. So
increase.
Not only that, as I started to get a little more depth, I started to look at my club head speed. My club head speed started to increase a little bit, which is always fun now at age 55. And I'm seeing some, so I didn't, of course, because now you're making a bigger coil. And I have a lot of thoracic rotation, and I just wasn't using it. But the key that unlocked it was the right shoulder back, as opposed to just trying to turn my core. I actually got the right shoulder to be as far behind me as I could, and went from 89 miles an hour on a 6-iron to 93 with that, which unlocked speed, and it unlocked a better angle club delivery into the golf ball. So just a little light bulb went off, and we'll see how long that feel lasts. Feels are very fickle. I tell that to my students. You might have a feel that works and you can run with it for a few weeks, and then all of a sudden that same cue doesn't necessarily produce the results you want. We were talking about how golf is a random game, and feels come and go. And it reminds me of a story years ago when I think it was Ian Poulter was struggling with his game, but he said, I'm just going to be patient because I know one or two things is going to come my way, and I'm going to go on a run here. And sure enough, he did. And because he was about to lose his card, and he ended up playing really well for a few weeks. And it's one of those things that as a golfer, you have to be patient, because sometimes those feels are going to really click in for you. And other times you're going to be in a little bit of a slump, and it's okay to be in a slump. You have to weather those, and that's a challenge mentally, which is another obviously huge skill in this game, is to be able to weather the downs and the ups. We just saw it in the Ryder Cup. How does a player react to somebody else chipping in when they thought they deserved to win the hole? I mean, emotional roller coasters. And when it comes to feels after a while, you work on them and they're not so fresh anymore. They don't quite work that well anymore. And you have to find the next feel that gets the swing to look and perform the way you want. And reminds me of my college golf coach. As we're talking in the mid to late 80s, he was one of the first ones to really get into using a lot of video. And he used to say, well, video doesn't lie. Well, now with all the tools we have, we can say, well, video actually does lie. If the camera angle's off, we're not getting all the great data we get from force plates and pressure mats and things like that. So video, quote unquote, lies. But in general, video is a pretty good tool still. Most great teachers are out there with their iPhones shooting video. And what he would say is like, what's the feel that's creating the right picture? And it might not be the same from week to week or month to month, So who knows when the next little light bulb's going to go off for me. Another light bulb that's kind of gone off for me is really, and I've known this all along, but it's the transfer of energy into the golf ball, into the club head, and everybody, including me, likes to hit it longer. So I still do this program called the Junior Competition Clinic, and I would measure all my kids in the program, measure their club head speed when they started, and then we had a 10-week program. I'd write their club head speed, get my TrackMan out, get their club head speed, and I write down, okay, it's 75 miles an hour, and then I put on a big index card with a Sharpie, 75 miles an hour. I said, okay, on week 10, we're going to retest you after you've done some speed training. And then I would give a prize to the kid who had the biggest increase in their club head speed. So it motivated them to do it. And then they, of course, would want the coach to hit balls too and see what my club head speed was. And I would make some practice swings before I would get on the TrackMan, and they would be almost like a baseball player with a big step first, like literally taking a step with my lead foot, lowering myself into the ground and exploding up. And I would do that without even thinking. It's just like, that's how my body learned how to, or that's how my body needed to move in order for me to generate the most club head speed I could, so I could basically show off in front of these kids and show them I can still hit the ball 300 yards, right? And that was an epiphany, because you don't necessarily think about that when you're in a regular golf stance. But if you really wanted to hit, if you just took a stick, like maybe one of those super speed sticks that has a little weight at the end, or the stack system that has a weight at the end, you said, okay, all I'm trying to do here, I'm not trying to hit the ball straight. I'm just trying to make this stick go as fast as possible. What does your body do to do that? Right? And when I was making my step and bracing into the ground, what that bracing is basically a braking mechanism that allows the next segment, in this case the club head, to whip past me. Rather than dragging the handle, pulling on the handle, it's like, no, how do you get that club head to go the fastest? Well, it's kind of like cracking a whip or snapping a towel. If I snap a towel, I have to pull the lead end back for the trail end to go flying by. So that is a braking mechanism, right? If you watch Rory McIlroy, he actually on his downswing has a stoppage or even a reversal of his hips. That is an incredible braking mechanism that lets that club head go flying by really, really fast. So it's one of those things where your body already knows how to do it. Any athlete who's ever hit a ball, a tennis ball, a baseball, that's what they do. I've got videos. I'm a huge baseball fan. I grew up in Venezuela. Baseball was the biggest sport. I played Little League baseball. And I love watching great hitters hit. And if you watch, it's the same sequence. They step in with their lead foot, and then that braces, and actually they push back off that lead foot, and then the bat head comes whipping around. And if you don't do it in that sequence, you're just simply not going to be as powerful. So in order to be powerful and efficient, you have to have a stopping or bracing or braking mechanism. And I don't know if enough people really work on that. So I would say getting more into teaching that on a regular basis, especially since most people are looking for more power. I'm like, how are we going to get as efficient as possible? So I'll take my impact bag and I'll give my students an alignment stick, and I'll say, okay, just make the loudest sound you can against that impact bag. Just make it like whack it as hard as you can. And they'll start to learn how to be efficient. Next thing you know, they're airborne at impact because they're using the ground so well. And it's like, yeah, look at that. You're looking like an athlete now. Not when you're swinging the club, but when you're actually trying to generate speed. And then if you think about it, this is one of my pet peeves, and I'm going down this. I know that we tend to talk about stuff and I just go down these rabbit holes, but you got me going. I'm gonna keep going with this, right? But so if you think about it, the purest form of power is when you're trying to swing it as fast as you can without worrying about where the ball goes, right? You're just swinging. Like I just said to you, just make the fastest swing you can. And then it's my job as an instructor to be able to organize you in a way where when you do swing that powerfully or that explosively, the ball goes where you want it to go. Because most of the time we're restricting ourselves in order to get the ball to go from point A to point B. So for example, if your grip is too strong for your biomechanics, if you let it go and totally release everything, you're going to hit a huge hook. So how many of those are you going to hit before you start restricting your release? Right? So it's my job to get your grip organized in a way where you can swing it as fast as you can, as athletically as possible, and the ball goes where you want it to go. Now you're more willing to free it up, let it go, trust it, all that stuff we hear all the great players say they do. You just watch these top players hit their drivers. Nobody's trying to finesse it into the fairway. They're all exploding into these golf balls, extremely athletic motions, but they hit it straight. And they really have to hit it straight because at 340, you can't hit it very far offline and keep it in the fairway. You can if you hit it 140. You don't have to be very good at having a good club face at 140. But if you hit a 340, you better have that club face pretty square at impact. So you better have your grip, your posture, your ball position, all the little details organized in order for that ball to go straight at that speed. Now, if you think about stability in a club head, and this is another one of my pet peeves when people say, well, I got to slow down. I'm not a big fan of slowing down because it's really hard to hit it farther if you're slowing down. Now, smooth is good, syrupy, relaxed, all those kinds of words, but not slow, because slow is just less speed. I think I've said this on the podcast before, but when I went, my first job in golf instruction was with Hank Haney, and he said, Josh, if you take a bad swing and slow it down, it's just a slow, bad swing.
Ouch.
Let's fix it and then speed it up, right? So if you think about stability, if you take a string and you hold and you put a little weight at the end of the string, you start to spin it. The faster you spin it, the more stable it is in its orbit, right? The slower you do it, the more wobbly it is. So we need that inertia. We need that momentum in order for that club head to be stable.
Good analogy.
We need that club face. In golf, we're trying to hit a ball straight. In baseball, you're great if you hit it to everywhere, right?
Yeah.
It's like we can't predict where to put the D because he hits it to all fields. So good for you. Well, in golf, we can't hit it to all fields. We got to play our foul balls, right? So we need a club face that's very stable and oriented towards our target reasonably. Doesn't have to be perfect, but reasonably. I remember when I first got my TrackMan, God, that was maybe it's 15, 18 years ago, whatever it is now. I was talking to Matt Freelich, who's I think still involved with the company and was selling TrackMans. I said, so when you test touring pros, what do their club faces look like relative to the targeted impact? I mean, I was looking at like what's the dispersion? How left or right can you have a club face and still play at the highest level? He said most of them are within 2 degrees of zero with their club face at impact. Give or take, it can be a little open, a little closed, but they're not like 5 degrees open or 7 degrees open or 7 degrees closed. You just can't play golf that way. If you have a club face that's that unstable because your grip isn't correct for you, then you are in restriction mode. And if you're in restriction mode, you are slow. And if you're slow, you don't get one of the two things that everybody asks me when I get to the lesson tee. I want more speed, I want more distance, and I want more accuracy. Well, you can get the accuracy part, but you're not going to get the distance part. But if you want both, and to play to your potential, we need both, then we need to organize you, which is why I assess everybody with Mike Adams' system of assessing golfers biomechanically, which takes a total of, I think, if I do it really efficiently, 2 minutes. If I do it inefficiently, it takes me 3 minutes. If I get carried away with some conversation or something. This is that quick. Now I know exactly how you're supposed to do it. So even people who do my online stuff that I've never seen before, I get them on video and I do the measurements with them so I understand. I don't want to take anybody down the wrong road. I want to know what your body can do and how you deliver the club face most consistently for your body type. But yeah, so that's I guess that's my I don't know if that's an epiphany, but it's something that I'm putting more into my teaching. I want my players to reach their potential, and I work with everybody from 5-year-olds to 90-year-olds, and I want everybody to be as efficient as possible.
Okay, I'm going to stop you. I'm sorry, I need to stop you because there's a knock at the door, and it's the sponsors who would love to have something to say here. So we're going to got to pay the bill. So we'll be back right after this. Multiple times you mentioned as fast as possible and as hard as you can.
Yeah.
Are those the same thing when you teach, or can they be teased apart?
I would say it as fast as possible, but I'd like to amend the as hard as you can, because when you're being very efficient, you're not really trying. You're more allowing. You're more letting. I think one of my videos I did recently was on the difference between trying and letting. You really want to allow these things to happen, which is when I was talking about like just taking a alignment stick and hitting against the impact bag and trying to make a loud sound. It's amazing how relaxed people are when they do it well and fast and powerfully, and how slow they are when they're trying to do it, grinding and trying to do it hard. So you find yourself on the practice tee or the lesson tee and you're super grinding and the effort level is super high, something's not very efficient, because most efficient things are not hard. They're easy. You hear this in the words coming out of great players. It was easy. It was fun. I was relaxed. It was smooth, right? You look at like Freddie Couples and Vijay Singh and players like that. You just see it just looks effortless rather than effortful. And I was doing a putting lesson with Bruce Rarick, who's I don't know if you've had him on your podcast. If you had. So we do a lot of putting lessons together with my students. It's just fantastic. And he goes, Josh, what was that you said the other day that was just like so insightful? I'm like, oh, I must have said something insightful. And I said, because with Bruce, it's like so much of it is getting your setup correct, right? Because if you get your setup correct, a lot of good things happen during the motions. I said, my quote was, be careful in your setup and be carefree in your swing. Right?
Ooh.
Yeah, I knew I'd get an ooh from
you.
Ooh.
I'm writing that one down.
Write it down. You can quote me on that one. I don't think I've had too many quotes through the years that people will actually quote me, but that one I think is
it might be the title of this episode. Be careful in your setup, be carefree in your swing.
Yeah. And I think what happens is we kind of get the opposite, where people aren't really precise enough with their setups. So now they're destined to failure, and now they have to be super careful or restricted or compensate for a poor setup. So how nice would it be if you could set up for a golf ball and know that more often than not it's going to go where you want it to go, and you can just let it go? Then there's no hard, there's no try, there's just allow, there's let, there's freedom, there's trust, all this stuff that we always want when we're playing our best golf. The Vision 54, Pia and Lynn talk about this all the time. It's like, what's the best version of you? And they have you write down a piece of paper. Chuck Hogan had me do this when I was working with him when I was a touring professional. He said, take a piece of paper, put a line down the middle, and on the left side, write down how you are when you play great. On the right side, how you are when you don't play great. Well, it's the same for everybody. Like on the left side of the piece of paper when you're playing great, it's easy, it's fun, it's smooth, it's soft, it's calm, it's quiet. On the other side, my brain's busy. I'm trying really hard. My grip pressure is too tight. I'm analytical. It's
distracted.
It's almost the same for everybody. Everybody's individual, and so you're going to have different things going on. But I know that for almost every golfer, if they knew they were going to be okay, they would let go, but they're not sure they're going to be okay. So if we can give them that sense of safety by saying, hey, you know what, let's take a little bit of time and make sure that club face is correct and that grip is correct and your ball position is correct. Yesterday I was giving a lesson, and I was overhearing somebody working with one of the guys on the men's Stanford golf team. And he said, he was working on the kid's driver, and the driver's going everywhere. And he goes, if you change your setup every time, it's different. How can you expect the thing to go to the same place every time? Right? And these aren't things that, it doesn't take a world-class golfer to set up well. Let me amend that. It doesn't take a world-class athlete to set up well. It just takes an organized person. It might take a world-class athlete to swing it like Rory McIlroy. Okay, fair enough. He was born with quite a bit of talent, more than most people who've ever swung a golf club. But if he's not organized at that power level, his ball's going everywhere. So if you go to a tour event and you're watching, I get to go to the AT&T every year, so I actually caddy for one of my students there, and I love just hanging out on the range watching all the players practice. Well, there's so much stuff down on the ground for their ball position, for their alignment, they're taking their time with their grip. They're very organized, right? I would say that being a really good player is somebody who, it starts with being really good at everything you do before you hit the shot, from the technical to the mental, to put yourself in the proper mental state to execute and put yourself in the proper technical position to be able to execute. And if not, then the whole swing, if you think about it, is a compensation for a poor setup and a disaster because you're mentally in the wrong place, which is how too many people play golf.
Oh, hi. Okay. I'm here. I thought I didn't know if you were taking a breath or ending a thought. So
good. I've said
okay. So let me ask you about the sound of a golf swing. Okay. What if you really pay attention, you can hear the swish of the club going by, going through its motion. Where in the swing should I hear the strongest part of that whoosh sound? Should that be at the top of the swing, from the bottom forward, does that make any sense?
Yeah. It for me, it should happen just barely past the ball.
Just barely past the ball.
I wouldn't even mind saying it's at the ball. The maximum speed I'd love to have right around where the ball is.
So that you'll hear the beginning of that sound and the follow through of it from the time you make contact through.
Yeah, if you're doing it too early, you're not going to deliver the most speed to the ball. We're gathering all this stuff, right? So somebody asked me the other day, what is a release? This is an interesting conversation. When I ask somebody what the release is, it's amazing. I get this perplexed look. It's like this term we use all the time in golf. And when I ask people, I say, well, what's your definition of release? Like, they kind of look at me like, I don't know, the club face turns over, my arms roll. I'm like, what's the definition of release? So it's to let go, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what are we doing? What are we releasing? Well, in the backswing, your trail arm folds, you got some elbow bend, you got some loading of the wrists, and then we release both of those. So I just like to use a free throw. Like, we love the Warriors here. We love Steph Curry. So I say, okay, show me your imitation of Steph Curry's 3-point shot or his free throw. And they bend their arm and they bend their wrist and they let it go. They release both those angles. So I'd say that's an arm release. Okay. All right. What are you doing in your backswing? You're coiling your body, right? And then that's going to get released. What are you doing with the ground where you're pushing into the ground and then you're exploding up? Well, you're releasing your legs too. If you watch, especially LPGA Tour players or the long drive guys, their legs are straightening through impact, right? So they have bend in their knees and then they extend their knees, and a lot of them are airborne at that point. So the release, as far as I'm concerned, is the loading and unloading of all those parts, and they all accumulate to give you this explosion at the bottom. So if you're trying to make that sound at the right place, you got to be able to release it at the right place, but you also have to be able to load it. Right? You have to load those joints. So earlier when we were talking about a bigger rotation for me, well, if I want more rotation through the ball and faster rotation, well, I need to load it bigger. I can't hit a punch shot as far as I can hit a full shot. Well, why not? Well, one of the reasons is I haven't coiled as much. I use a piece of technology called Sportsbox, which is a really cool 3D app. I recommend every instructor use it because it actually quantifies. It's what we used to have to do with all the electrodes on you and get into a lab. Now you can do with video. It's incredible. And it tells you the numbers. So I had this one student who was turning about 60 degrees with his torso. And he's a big, strong guy, can still hit about 260. I'm like, man, this is like a teacher's dream. I'm going to increase this person's torso rotation to 80 to 90, and he's going to love me because he's going to get 25 more yards. And I told him, you don't get 25 every week. That's not how it works. But once he started turning bigger, all of a sudden, whoa, he's 20, 25 yards longer, and we can kind of quantify it, which is one of the cool things. So give a little plug to that app. I'm not involved with them on any ownership basis. I just love the product. So
how is his accuracy though?
Oh, well, what do you expect, Fred? I gave him the grip that works for him. His accuracy is great. Right? Grip
Awesome.
controls the club face. I don't know if I ever told you this story. So,
But you're
I
not
was a
going
young-
to right now. We're going to be telling that story will come back right after this. Previously on Golf Smarter, Josh Zander was saying, I don't think I've ever told you this story.
I haven't told you the story. So when I was a really, maybe I have. I mean, we've done a few of these now. How many? Do you know how many this is for us now? It's.
I have not looked. It's a
We're
lot.
growing old.
And it's getting better every time, too. I love it.
So one of the things I did, because this is my 30th, I think this is my 30th season teaching. When I first started teaching, there really wasn't the infrastructure in place to learn how to be a good coach. It's a lot better. The PGA's done a better job. There's better mentoring out there now. But in my era, you sort of had to seek it out yourself. And one of the things we did have was a PGA coaching and teaching summit was happening at the time, and they were very good at taping everything. And so you could order the videos from all the presentations. And so I'm like, okay, if I'm going to learn how to really be the best teacher I can be, I am going to go fly and sit on a golf bag behind a great teacher and watch. But I also would like to have more information. So I ordered the entire set. Like, you got a deal if you order the entire set. It was a big investment for me at the time, but it was a great one. And one of the videos I saw was just a panel of like 4 or 5 of the top teachers at the time. And they were asked a very simple question. That was, what's the most important part of the golf swing? And the first person said it's the grip. And I'm kind of rolling my eyes. I'm like, come on, the grip. Big deal, right? It's like, give me some torso rotation. Give me some, give me some power stuff. Give me some fun stuff, some sexier stuff. It's like, and the more I teach, the more I realize that guy was right. Because if that grip is wrong, you can't hit it straight. And if you can't hit it straight, you're going to restrict your power to try to hit it straight, right? We can't ignore the fact that we're trying to hit the ball from point A to point B, right? You can have all the power in the world, but if you can't direct it at your target, so understand. And when I say the grip, and he didn't go into this, he just said, my answer is the grip. And somebody else said, my answer is, the difference between hips and torso rotation, whatever it was. I can't remember at this point. The one that really hit me was the grip, just because I thought it wasn't that important. And then here I am 30 years later saying that guy was right. And the grip is not just the grip. It's the grip that's correct for you, which is different for everybody. Like I'm a little old school. I have a sheet of paper where I do my assessments, and I got these big binders that I carry around with me. I have to somehow put them online, but every sheet in there is a different person. And when I go through the assessments, it's very rare that any of those people, these 2 thick binders and hundreds of sheets in there, and it's very unusual to see 2 people who are exactly the same, right? So that gives me the blueprint. I'm going to teach this person differently. They need different things, right? But going back to the grip is not just how you're designed to put your hands on the club, but also understanding what a square club face is. I can't tell you how many people set up, they might have a grip that's quote unquote correct for them, but the club face is a little closed or it's a little open. And by the way, very few people have an open club face at address. When I measure them, and I have a cool device that David Adele made, it's called the Grip Analyzer, where you can put your club in there and you can see where your club face really is relative to the target. And it'll say it's 5 degrees open, 5 degrees closed, whatever it is. Rarely do I see somebody with an open face. Here's a tip for the manufacturers out there, or a thought for the manufacturers. Design a club that makes it easy for people to have the club face look square and be square, because their eyes tend to gravitate to the top edge versus the leading edge, and they want to get the top edge square, and the face is then basically 15 degrees closed. Well, what are you going to have to do to not hit it dead left? You're going to have to hold off, right? Now you're shorter. Thank you very much, right? So the grip is a relationship between how you're designed to hold the club and the proper club face. And I'm going to stop my thought there.
Why?
And I'll just go on and say that and if that's wrong, you're making golf super hard for yourself.
I'm concerned about your notebooks. Do you back them up? Do you make copies of them? Do you
thing is, if I lose a sheet, it takes me 2 minutes to get the information back with the person in person, so it's not a big deal. Yeah, they're getting so heavy that I'm like, I got to figure out a better way to do this. And the people I do my online stuff with, they're like, we're going to give you a better system.
Oh man, I know you're an Apple person like I am. Ever since I was able to get an Apple Pencil on my iPad, every interview, I mean, I had 13 or 14 notebooks from all the interviews that I was doing. Well, now they're all in the same app, and I just take notes, and I can use like highlighters of different colors and pens and different stroke lengths, and I can make all these notes, and they're all in one place, and it's backed up every night. Oh my God, I just thinking about your notebooks makes me cringe.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we'll talk about that offline.
You mentioned Terry Rolls earlier, and I reacted. I heard so many different instructors talk about Terry. I did do an interview with him early on. He had an indoor teaching setup in San Francisco, in financial district of San Francisco, and I went and did it. Yeah. I did a session with him and recorded an interview, and have not been able to get him to respond. I would love to have him back on the show because he is such an incredible wealth of information, as are you. I'm not discounting what you have to say, because you blow my mind every time.
He's fantastic. You would do a great job on your show. He's an innovative thinker. He's a researcher. He's a great communicator. He's a gem, and we're lucky to have him in our business for sure.
Absolutely. So now I'm just curious about your bag. How far do you hit a 9-iron?
9-iron, 140.
So if you got a 135 shot, you're going, I can just hit my 9-iron. I'll be okay with that.
Yeah, and I might grip down like 1/8 of an inch and hit it. Just kind of account
that. That's subtle. 1/8 of an inch will make that much difference on your yardage?
Yeah, it'll make 3 or 4 yards. Yeah.
Wow. And you can do that.
I'm not like Phil, where I know the exact calculations. You know, he's got that great interview with David Faraday that I have people look at from time to time, where he says, "Hey, David, do you want to know what really goes on through my head?" Everybody should watch that. It's fascinating what goes through his head. He talks about different kinds of grasses. He talks about barometric pressure. He talks about having 2 stock swings that go different distances, if it's with the grain, if it's down the grain, if it's teed up versus when it's on the grass, whether it's early in the morning, it's later in the afternoon. And he takes into account all that stuff, and obviously that's happening for him at a split second. And if I was playing professionally, I would definitely go. Because distance control. Here's another. I know you always get me going.
I love it.
Controlling your distance is an underappreciated form of accuracy. Most people say, "Well,
yes,
they're like."
Great point.
I'll tell you a story. So I'm taking a lesson from one of my mentors, Jim Hardy, at one of his seminars. And I'm hitting 4 irons, and he points out, okay, go hit it at that palm tree at the end of the range. And I hit a solid 4 iron that's about 15 yards left, and I kind of roll my eyes like, man, let me scrape over another ball. He goes, hang on, Josh, what was wrong with that one? I said, well, it's left. It's like 12 to 15 yards left. He goes, okay, so you're 40 feet left of the hole. You hit it solidly, so you're pin high. Can you get down in 2 from 40 feet? I'm like, of course I can. That's either going to be an easy lag putt or just a simple chip and run shot. He goes, well, what are you trying to do from 210 yards? I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, aren't you just trying to make a 3?
Mm.
And then I love showing this to my students. I get Scott Fawcett's little, Scott Fawcett, from Decade Golf. He's got these little cards he hands out at all of his seminars, and it tells the scoring average from every distance. And
yep.
And I don't know, 210 yards, it's like 3.3 or something to get into the hole for a touring pro. Now, I'm not a touring pro.
Wow.
So if I can make a 3 from 210 yards, I'm gaining a third of a shot on the best players on the planet. So why was Jim saying that to me? Because he's like, dude, you just got to hit it solidly so you can hit it pin high. You don't have to be so precise with your accuracy. After all, trying to get a club face to point something 210 yards away is really hard. Not to mention the fact that there's atmospheric conditions too that might kick your ball offline, right? Even if you're perfect, and there might be like a little piece of dirt that the ball collected from, when it bounced on the drive. I mean, what you need to do is you need to hit the ball solidly. And Tiger's talked about this forever. It's like, I try to hit the ball pin high to a reasonable place. And if you can make a 3 from 210 yards, you're doing great. So that really hit me hard because I'm like, huh. And by the way, what are you trying to do when you have a 7-iron in your hand? You're trying to make a 3 also. Not just a 4-iron. Just make a 3 with your 7-iron. If you make a 2, then that's a bonus. But when touring pros, and I obviously refer to them a lot because we get so much information from everything gets tracked on tour, right? And again, Tiger talks about this a lot. What are you trying to do? You're trying to birdie the par 5s. That's 4 opportunities right there because you're going to be around the green in 2 if you hit 2 good shots. Get those up and down. There's a 68. If you can average 68, you're going to be the leading scoring average on tour. Okay? You're going to win the Varden if you average 68. You have 4 opportunities right there. If you can par the rest of them and birdie the par 5s, now I know that's not how golf goes, but you're going to have some random shots that you're aiming at the middle of the green and the 7-iron all of a sudden goes 2 feet from the hole. And you're going to make a few birdies that way too because you're going to hit some of your dispersion is going to end up around the hole as long as you're smart about where you're aiming. And that's a Scott Fawcett conversation. He's expert in that, or Mark Brody.
Yeah. Had them both on.
Yeah, great. So, but the thing is, you got to hit it solidly because if I'm trying to hit a 150-yard shot and I hit it 130 dead on line, that's a 20-yard miss. If I'm trying to hit a 150-yard shot and I hit it 150, but I missed 10 yards to the left, that's only a 10-yard error. That's much better than a 20-yard error. I'd much rather be 30 feet than 60 feet, right? So online, hitting it dead straight, not as important. We want reasonably straight. And remember, I'm going to help you with your grip to make sure it's going to go reasonably straight, but hit it solidly, right? So that's what we're really after. If you can make solid contact and have a predictable flight, you can play some great golf. It's the mishits more than the offline that really messes people up. I sculled it, I chunked it. It's like, or I think my 7-iron goes 150, but it actually goes 133 when I hit it solidly. But I didn't know that because I have too much ego to do that. Right? I can't tell you how many people think their 7-iron goes 150. Well, show them on track, man. They're actually going 135, buddy. Sorry. We can work on your distance maybe to get it to 150, but don't pull a 7-iron at 150. You're going to end up in the front bunker.
Yeah.
Even dead online.
Yep.
It's in the front bunker.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
I just, I love when you name drop and I can go, oh, they've been on the show. Oh, they've been on the show. It makes me feel either that I'm doing something right or that we know the same people. And the reason I bring that up, because we're going to hear what's happening this week on Golf Smarter Mulligans. And I know that Jim Hardy's episode is coming up soon, and I'm not sure if it's this week or not. So let's take a listen, and we'll be back after this. Well, Jim Hardy's episode will be published in about a month, but this week on Golf Smarter Mulligans, it's the first of a 2-part conversation with a columnist from the Wall Street Journal on a piece he wrote called Golf's Biggest Delusions: 9 Things That People Say About Golf That Isn't True. But a big part of this episode follows this line of questioning. Are there specific golfers that you enjoy covering?
Some of my favorite golfers are Phil Mickelson, Steve Stricker, Jim Furyk, Rory McIlroy.
Because
Phil is the guy that will give you an interesting, responsive answer to questions, unlike a lot of them. He thinks of himself as an intellect and a wit, and he is. He's not afraid to try to say something new or thoughtful. He's thinking it over. Some people say he's a little full of himself, and maybe he is, but I like him. He's famous for standing there for hours giving autographs. Generally a very personable guy. He sometimes will talk about economics and deliver ultimatums on what should be done as if his opinion is more valuable than everybody else's a little bit. Tiger is the opposite of that. Tiger is actually pretty forthcoming on explaining his golf game and technique, and he actually reveals a lot of stuff in that respect. But you get him off subject, and he's just a chess grandmaster about 5 moves ahead of you in not revealing things.
That's episode 233 of Golf Smarter Mulligans, the first of 2 episodes featuring golf columnist who covered the 4 majors each year for the Wall Street Journal, Paul Newport, being featured on our podcast Offspring, Golf Smarter Mulligans, being released this Friday morning. Originally published in March of 2012. So if becoming a better, smarter golfer only once per week isn't enough, then don't miss the chance to get 2 episodes every week with Golf Smarter, the golf podcast that proudly focuses on how to improve your game, and Golf Smarter Mulligans, episodes from our archives that revisit the best of Golf Smarter. They're both available for free from wherever you're listening right now. How much of those Phil Mickelson details that he goes through that you talked about a moment ago are relevant to recreational golfers? Now, I try to play twice a week. And that's a lot of golf for most people. I mean, if they get out once a week, they're pretty happy. It's once a month, twice a month, maybe, and, with some practice, hopefully, that goes with that. But a lot of those details that you talked about, that Phil thinks about with every shot, I wouldn't know what to do with. And how much do I need to know?
I'm talking about playing at the highest level.
Of course.
Where the difference between, gaining a third of a stroke here and a third of a stroke there might be the difference between several $100,000 in your pocket at the end of the week with the amount of money that they're playing for these days.
The amount of money he's gambling for each round.
That's a different. Let's stick to my lane, which is more about just I would say that you don't have to be that specific, but let's just say, I love to do playing lessons. And it's amazing how many strokes I can save somebody when I'm actually on the golf course with them. So assessing a lie, for example, a ball that's sitting a little bit up in the rough and the grass is growing with you. Alert, this ball is going to go far. Down grain, out of the rough, super, super long distance. Into the grain, out of the rough, ball just does not go anywhere. So I tell this to a lot of people, especially the kids who are trying to play high-level junior college golf, professional golf. Over the green is the worst place to be. You airmail the green, you never hear an announcer say, "Oh, he airmailed the green, he'll be fine." Right? Oh, boy. It's in somebody's backyard. It's hit a cart path. It's in a flower bed. At best, you're hitting a short game shot down a hill,
right,
where the green's going away from you, right? So I'll share a story. I was playing in a member pro at Olympic Club, and I don't really play in tournaments anymore, but one of my students like, "Hey, come and play with this with me." I'm like, "Sure." So we get on the second, not the second hole Olympic, but our second hole, because it was a shotgun. And I hit the ball just barely into the right rough. I've got like 170 yards. That's a comfortable 7-iron for me. And the ball was sitting up and it was down grain. And I took my 7-iron, and instead of hitting 170, I hit about 205. Whoa. The ball just took off on me into some junk behind the green. That my next shot was, I was on my knees with a 5-wood with the shaft literally resting on the ground, the entire shaft, trying to scrape it out from under there. That was my next shot. Ugh. Needless to say, I made a 7, and he was just, it was a best ball, so he was on the fringe and 2, and he 4-putted because he was cavalier about his little tap-in. So we ended up 2 over par after 2 holes. Right away, you're already way too far behind to, you can't make a double as your best ball. Anyway, just because of lack of playing time, because I'm like a lot of the people you're saying, play once a month or twice a month, and I just didn't remember that one little detail. Now, if I was a touring pro, I would have looked at that and said, okay, I'm okay if I leave it short of the green. I'm going to take like a 9-iron here. And if I end up in the front bunker or chipping from the front of the green, I'm a good enough short game player. I can get that down to make a 4. But the worst thing I can do is airmail the screen, right? So you really have to be careful about those kinds of things. So it's, you don't have to be as detailed as, but you have to have some ability to understand what's in front of you, because it's not about just making good swings. It's about making good decisions. And a lot of those decisions are based on, hey, what's the situation here? Where should I aim this ball? What is the lie going to do to my ball? Like we're in a heat wave right now. It's 90 degrees at Stanford today. The ball goes farther than when it's 60 degrees. There's just no doubt about it. You can't expect the ball to carry as far when it's cold. And I remember watching the President's Cup when it was at Harding Park, and they were on it was the second hole during the tournament. It was actually the 11th hole, the little par 3. It's 160 yards, and some of these guys were hitting 7-irons. These are tour players. Well, it was soupy, foggy, dense. The ball wasn't going anywhere, right? That's usually a wedge for those guys. They were hitting 7-irons. I'm like, oh, finally, they're hitting numbers that regular people hit just because they're in San Francisco, right?
Yeah.
Weather, right? So you've got to, if you don't have that as part of your skill set, then yeah, you're going to be your 10, 15, 20 handicapper, even if you have the skills of being a single-digit golfer, because you don't know the game. You know how to swing the club, but you don't really know how to play golf. There was this one student of mine who came to, I had Mike Adams and Terry Rolls come in and do a clinic with me, and this kid is now playing college golf, just explosive player, and he was hitting the ball great, and with a little bit of help, he was hitting it fantastic. And Mike just kind of pulled me aside. He goes, all you got to do with this guy is just teach him how to play the game. He knows how to hit the ball, right? Just like you need to get out there on the golf course. And so we did a playing lesson, and I'm understanding, what are you thinking? What are you trying to do with this shot? That kind of stuff is what's going to take him to a level where he'll play high level Division I golf and maybe professional golf. It's not hitting it any better. He hits it 330 and with a 2-yard fade. I mean, kid kills it. Can hit any shot he wants. He's very creative. So he's got all the talent in the world, but he's got to learn how to apply it. And so that's the player that really needs to have a conversation with Phil Mickelson or with me to start to understand how to play the game, rather than just like, okay, I'm just going to work on my game.
It's interesting because you said about the decisions that are made, too many decisions are made based on wherever, all the various elements involved. It looks to me, in playing recreational golf, that most decisions are made based on the numbers that come off your rangefinder. Everyone pulls out their rangefinder, and they stand next to the ball, they pull out the rangefinder, they look for the pin, they get a number, they go grab a club. They don't look at where the ball's sitting. They don't look at which way the wind, the wind will be something let me just toss a little grass here and see what that means. Do you really know what that means? I don't think you really know what that means, if it's blowing hard or not. Are we doing two? Say again?
How is the ball going to react when it lands? It may be 100 pin, but you may want to land it at 128 because the greens are really firm and you're coming out of the rough with no spin. Right? It's just those kind of subtleties. That's playing the game. I had 2 golf coaches in college, and one liked us to practice a lot, and the other guy liked us to play a lot. And there comes a point where when you have the skills, it's a matter of like, how do I apply the skills? So if you're a reasonable ball striker and you have a couple hours on your hand, go play 9 holes. Instead of just going to the range on a mat that's aligning you to the same place and beating 7-irons and 5-irons and drivers for 2 hours, go learn how to play the game. Go throw balls if you can. I know you got to keep up the pace of play, but go throw balls in random places and experiment. What do I have to do? Obviously, I can't. When I'm doing playing lessons, I'm like, you now have the benefit of my 47 years of playing and 30 years of teaching experience to look at a shot and help you go through my mental processes of what needs to happen assessing the lie. What's the wind? How's it going to react? All those things. Is the grain growing with you? Is it away from you? All the little subtleties that you'll hear in that Mickelson conversation that are going to help you make a good decision. So now you have a chance, because one of the worst things is you hit a great shot and you have a poor result. That's kind of a bummer, right? I hit that 7-iron at Olympic beautifully. Man, that was flushed. 205. Look at me, big muscles, 205 yards. You're welcome to making a 7 on a par 4 early on, and your partner's like, "Oh, I brought this pro. I made a triple on the second." Oh, man.
We'll talk about this afterwards, but I want to get the link to that Mickelson interview, and we'll put it in the show notes and on the blog post for today's episode. Also there, I would like to include some amazing offers that you'd like to make to the Golf Smarter community.
Yeah, so I've got a couple of different offers. One is I've got a private video library that you can subscribe to, and there's a 50% offer on that for a yearly subscription. And then also, if you want to join my online program, there's $100 off my online program where I can shepherd you through your golf, and we can go on this journey together. I can assess you, make sure that you're holding the club, you're in the right posture, doing all the things that are the way you're designed to play your best golf. So we have that assessment, and then I basically coach you along the way and keep you on the proper path. So there's an offer there as well. So looking forward to it. I want to throw some flowers your way. I always really enjoy our conversations. You're a great question asker, interviewer. And I know we talked about some things that we were going to talk about on the show, and we never got to any of those. So that means we just get to do this again, hopefully sooner rather than later. But you have great guests on your show. I'm a fan. I'm a listener.
Oh, thank you.
And I enjoy just hanging out and talking to you.
Oh, that's all too kind. I really appreciate it, because I really love spending the time with you too. So there's going to be 2 links that I'm going to put in the show notes and in the blog posts at golfsmarter.com. One is for, it's the video consultation, and $100
Yeah, so
off.
$100 off the program if you decide you want to join and go on the journey with me, or the other one, you can sign up and just have access to my video library, which talks about all different parts of the game. So it's instructional library. Yeah. Okay.
And is there a cost to that part?
Yeah. So it's a $100 subscription per year, and there's a 50% off if you use the Golf Smarter coupon.
Perfect. Thank you, Josh. Thank you for all this information. And maybe someday we'll actually hopefully someday soon, we'll talk about all the things that we discussed before we started recording.
There you go. There's so much to talk about.
And so little time. Well, I found the YouTube video of Flaherty and Mickelson that discusses everything that goes on through Phil's mind with each shot. The link to that and to Josh's generous offers are in today's show notes and in the blog post when you visit today's episode at golfsmarter.com. It's time to thank this week's newest golf ambassador, Steve Hahn from Huntington Beach, California. One of my favorite beaches ever, because I spent so much time there as a little kid. Anyway, for his efforts, Steve chose to receive the glove and glove storage compartment from our friends at redroostergolf.com, the unique glove subscription service with a tremendous amount of styles and sizes to fit everyone's needs. And now they have much more than just gloves, so please check them out at redroostergolf.com. All Steve did to receive this gift was take less than 1 minute to call our toll-free Golf Smarter listener line and record this week's show open. You're invited to be one of our ambassadors too. And when you do, you'll have a choice of a free gift. Check out today's show notes to see more and the links about each gift you have to choose from, whether it's Tony Manzoni's video, a box of Odin X1 balls with a Golf Smarter logo, or the glove and glove storage compartment from redroostergolf.com. So when you write to me about anything, don't be surprised when I write back with your answer and a pitch to do a future episode opening. To see and hear the highlights of our interviews, please follow us at Golf Smarter on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, for our ongoing posts of videos and articles. We're putting up new content 5 times each week. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions for upcoming episodes, just write to golfsmarterpodcast@gmail.com or click on the Hey Fred button when you visit golfsmarter.com.